The San Jose Sharks add some depth pieces ahead of the 2025 trade deadline.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be discussing a series of moves Mike Grier made to add some depth pieces to the San Jose Sharks / San Jose Barracuda roster as they traded away Vitek Vanecek. They also made a trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So before we get to all that and get to know the new players and Teal, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, so we have two trades to talk about. Vitek Vanecek getting traded to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Patrick Giles, a forward who is immediately assigned to the San Jose Barracuda. And then later this evening, the Sharks trading a 2028 fifth-round pick for Vincent Desharnais, a big defenseman. So we're going to start with the Vanecek trade, kind of discuss that, look at the return, if it was fair, get to know Giles and kind of what this means for the backup goaltending situation right now with Askarov hurt and kind of what's in flux there. And again, I still think the Sharks might try to add a piece. Let's start with kind of initial reaction from hearing it. I had to ask what is a Patrick Giles to our Florida Panthers co-host Armando when I heard the trade. And it's a depth piece, right? We knew Vanecek, one, with his salary being what it was at over $3 million, two, with his play this year. It just wasn't going to be a big return, right? And for the Sharks, you got something for a guy that you were 100% not going to resign, right? The Sharks are not going to resign Vanecek. The Sharks are not going to resign Georgiev. They're going to try to find a partner for Alexander. They're going to try to find a partner for Yaroslav Askarov this offseason, right? Askarov's the future. Like, you went out, you traded a boatload of stuff to get Askarov. He is your future. Getting a depth player back in Giles is perfectly fine, right? It's better than nothing. And maybe you could have gotten like a 6th or 7th round pick from him. Remember when the Sharks traded a 6th round pick for Mackenzie Blackwood and people threw a fit about it? Like, you could have done that, but I don't think right now you have to think of like what the Sharks are trying to do, right? They're going to be trading away pieces by Friday, right? Of Nico Sturm. You expect Luke Cunnin to both probably be gone. And they're going to have to bring up players from the Barracuda. They wanted to add some more pieces and competition because they want this Barracuda team to be good, right? We saw this really happen last year, as well as guys that you expected to be with the Barracuda all season, guys like Ryan Carpenter and Justin Bailey, to help some of these young guys along, end up spending time on the Sharks, and the Barracuda team, which they thought would be at least competitive last year, wasn't, because they just didn't have enough depth, right? And I think for the Sharks, and more importantly, the Barracuda, this is a piece to add some depth. So if you do trade away 2 of your bottom 6 players, maybe 3, and we heard Ty Dellinger being potentially teams interested in that, right? That's a whole line of players you just pulled off the Sharks roster right there. Maybe you get some guys back, maybe you don't. And right, if you pull a whole line off of the Sharks, that means you got to bring up a whole line off of the Barracuda, right? And this Barracuda team is like in a playoff fight right now that I'm recording this before the game tonight. But like this Barracuda team is fighting for, a playoff spot. It feels like they're going to be a playoff team, but you're fighting for position. You're fighting for like, this is a lot of these guys are going through a playoff race for the first time. So if this is a kind of a deal to protect the Sharks and also protect the Barracuda. So that way you have a guy who has spent a lot of time, basically spent the last few seasons playing in the AHL. We'll talk about Giles here a little bit more in the second segment, but like you're trying to protect your investment. And that way you don't have to go out and maybe spend another draft pick or like maybe swap some players or whatever it is. You turn Vitek Vanecek into a depth piece who is signed and for the next 2 seasons, like this year and next year. And you're giving a guy who's not really gotten a chance, like he's played 9 NHL games, but hasn't really gotten a chance to kind of compete for an NHL roster because of he's playing with the Florida Panthers. Like that team is really good. So you're putting him in a position where he's probably going to be able to kind of earn some more ice time. Probably going to be able to play some NHL games here at some point this season. If not, he's going to be able to compete for a roster spot next season. So I do think I would rather get something. And even if that something is an AHL player, then nothing for Vitek Vanecek, who again was going to walk this summer. And like if the Sharks had re-signed Vitek Vanecek, I would have had a lot of question marks about some of the goaltending decisions there. He came in, he did his job, he held down the fort for a little while. He will be definitely added to the all rebuild team for the Sharks. And, we can put his jersey up there with all the other guys who came in and held down the fort for a season for San Jose. So, but I think, though, for San Jose, like, again, Giles is not the most exciting player, right? And I know, right? A pick could be anything, even a boat. If you had gotten like a 6th round or 7th round pick for him, that's not helping. Like that pick is not helping the Sharks for the next 5+ seasons, right? Like realistically, a 7th round pick, if they ever even do anything, the pick is not turning into anything that's helpful for you for several seasons. Giles can help the Sharks. More importantly, Giles can help the Barracuda right now and next year. So I'm perfectly fine with it. And I think, again, like it's fine. So again, I had to look him up. I had to kind of do my research. Sorry to Mr. Giles, who we'll dig into more here in just a minute. But I thought it would be honestly, I thought it would be a pick, but I think it makes sense for Mike Grier again. And I talked about where I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Grier and Joe Will do try to find some reinforcements for the Barracuda for a team that they want to have playoff success, right? A team that hasn't been to the playoffs in several years, a team that has has a fair amount of veterans and high quality veterans. And you have a player like Askarov who you want to have playoff success, and that's like the one thing missing from his resume is playoff success. Like go out and add to this team, which I think can be very good. Like this Barracuda team can be very, very good. When they decide to play like they're very good, this Barracuda team can be very good. So we'll dig into Giles here in just a second, get to know him, and then kind of talk about the goal situation for the Sharks over the last 20 games here. So we'll get to that here in just one second. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Again, Steph Curry, doing Steph Curry things. Why not make some money on the next Curry flurry? Seems like a good idea to me. And when Curry goes off and you win, you can get paid instantly with FanDuel. Their app is super easy to use. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, before we continue, we're going to dive into Giles a little bit and then talk about the goaltending. Of course, want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't already, perfect time to subscribe. Of course, with the trade deadline on Friday, we'll have you covered for all the news and action, whatever happens that day. We have more draft profiles coming up next week. Get you guys ready for the draft. And of course, we're talking Macklin Celebrity and Will Smith all the time. So we're on the push to 4K on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, perfect time to do so right now. All right. What are the Sharks getting in one Patrick Giles? So let's get to know him a little bit. Patrick Giles is a former Boston College. Already are like another guy from Boston. Can the Sharks not well, I'm sorry, the Boston College and Boston University, last time I checked, they pump out good hockey players. Just kind of what happened. So he was undrafted, went through the U.S. national program, played at Boston College for 4 years, wore an A in his last 2 seasons from there. Went and played with the Charlotte Checkers after that, signed a AHL deal with the Charlotte Checkers. Of course, that is the Florida Panthers affiliate, where he played pretty well for them and scored, especially last year, scored pretty well, earned himself an NHL deal out of it. So let's look at him a little bit more here. 6'5", 215 pounds, 25 years old, signed for this season and next year at the $775,000 year league minimum. He has played 9 games in the NHL, 0 goals, 0 assists, 4 shots on goal, averaging .723. So tiny sample size for him. 36.61% Corsi for, 33.33% goals for in the AHL this season. A little bit more production, 39 games, 5 goals, 2 assists on 50 shots on goal. Also has worn the A for the Charlotte Checkers. So I think for Giles, like, he's a big boy, right? And you look at especially the Barracuda and the Sharks, especially the Barracuda, they do have some smaller players. You think of Bordelot, you think of Gushin, like they do have some smaller forward. Tristan Robbins, not the biggest guy either. So this just adds another big boy, right? And I know some people, like, I'm always just get good hockey players. Sometimes you do have to add a little bit of some beef on the line there for them. So reading kind of the scouts and stuff like that, not the greatest skater, is definitely a late bloomer. I'm not expecting, like, this isn't going to turn into some home run pick. I think this is just going to be a quality guy who can help just kind of help. I know Max Miller wrote about he has 3 shorthanded goals. You think about especially the Barracuda and their penalty kill. How often does Ethan Cardwell feel like he gets out at least once a game for a shorthanded chance? If you pair those 2 guys together, like, you might have potential of some of that power kill mentality of being able to potentially add some shorthanded offense for you. So, like I said, I do believe this is going to be a player who probably gets a couple NHL games here, and it's probably going to be a guy who's competing for a spot next season. But most likely he's going to spend his time in the AHL. And if you need to call him up for a couple games because somebody gets hurt, you need a guy like on the 4th line, like that's probably going to be his role in the organization. But again, you got something that you can figure out for the next season or so for a guy that you're going to let walk. So with Vitek Vanecek. What does this mean for the Sharks goaltending situation? So Georgi Romanov was recalled today from the San Jose Barracuda to back up Gorgiev. So that Gorgiev and Georgi Romanov, that's going to be fun. So Romanov he has played a couple NHL games, gotten a couple games here and there. I think he's just going to be the backup right now until Askarov is ready. Curtis Pachelka did mention that Askarov has been skating, but is still day to day. I would assume he probably at least gets a one game with the Barracuda before getting back up with the Sharks, just to kind of make sure that he is all good to go. The Barracuda are playing Wednesday night. Their game is like literally about ready to start here as I'm recording this. It's 7:01 Pacific time. And then the Barracuda do play, of course, this weekend. So if we see Askarov, and the Sharks also are going to be starting an 8-game homestand. So it'll be nice to have Askarov right in your backyard if you need him. I would assume Barracuda play, he's probably going to get a home game at some point, and then if he performs well, we'll probably see Askarov get swapped up for Romanov here. So part of me still thinks that the Sharks might try to add somebody on the cheap just to add a little bit more depth there, because again, you have 3 goalies in the organization who have NHL contracts, right? You have Gorgiev, you have Romanov, and then you also have Askarov right now. You could also, excuse me, if in a pinch, Aaron Dell, you could sign him to an NHL deal if you need to. Or I would be very interested in signing Gabe Carrier, who's on an AHL only deal. I would be very happy to sign him to an NHL deal, and let him, because he has done very well in the ECHL and he's performed very well in the AHL. He's a guy I would be excited if they gave him an NHL and stashed him for the next season or so. He has shown some potential there. So, but I wouldn't be surprised though if the Sharks just kind of kick around, just like they did last year with Devin Cooley. Maybe they find a veteran goalie who's kind of not getting a chance in the AHL, bring him in, especially if you do want Askarov to help with a playoff push, right? That's going to be the big balance for Mike Grier is, do you want Askarov to play meaningless NHL games, or do you want Askarov to play very meaningful AHL games as the Barracuda, again, are trying to make a playoff push, secure their playoff spot, and then play playoff games? So we'll see what Mike Grier thinks here. And if the Sharks do go out and they're not going to spend a lot. It's probably going to be a late round pick type of thing. Like, they're not going to spend a lot for it. It'll be fine. I still interested to see what Chicago does with again, they have 3 goalies under contract here. I know Edmonton is still a team that is very much, who knows what they do, right? Because again, it's Edmonton and they have no money. So also Chicago got a point tonight. Let's go. They lost in overtime, but Chicago did get a point tonight. So we'll take that. Back to 3 points between the two. So yeah, let's see what the Sharks do here with goalie. Part of me, just a gut feeling. I have no, again, I don't have any intel or anything like that. I'm just going on gut feelings, looking at what Mike Grier has done in the past. Last year, granted, the Sharks didn't have an Askarov in the system, but I'm really curious to see what they do with Askarov here, and especially again for a guy who they want to. That's the one thing missing on his resume is playoff success. So we're going to talk about the Desharnais trade, as the Sharks again made another move, adding a big boy depth defenseman. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up, we talk about the latest trade. Do want to, of course, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this one, go check out one of the other great shows here at the Locked On Network. Of course, you have Locked On Fantasy Hockey, you have Locked On NHL, or any of the shows in the Bay Area, right? Locked On Niners, Locked On Warriors, Locked On A's, Locked On Giants. Plenty of shows here the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. All right. And then, of course, this evening, Wednesday night, the Sharks acquired Vincent Desharnais from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Desharnais, former 7th-round pick of the Edmonton Oilers way back in 2016. He is 28. He turns 29 at the end of May. A guy who's kind of worked his way to be in the NHL. He didn't make his NHL debut until he was 26 with the Oilers. And then this season signed with the Vancouver Canucks. He played 34 games and then got traded to the Penguins as part of the Marcus Peterson deal as a Shark, or as, of course, the Canucks in their Infinity Gauntlet of Petersai. So Penguins turn around and flipped him. The Penguins also just made another deal as well, too. It's great when all the bad teams are just flipping the same pieces back and forth. It's great. It makes it fun. So let's look at what the Sharks are getting with Desharnais. So again, big boy, 6'7", 226 pounds. Like I said, 28, turns 29 at the end of May. He is signed for this year and next year. 2 years at $2 million at AV. So very easy contract to kind of do what you need to with it. Not much production. So 44 games between the Sharks and between the Penguins and the Canucks. 0 goals, 3 assists, 27 shots on goal, averaging 15.37 time on ice. Corsi for 47.96, goals for 37.21. Defensively, he's a pretty solid player, kind of in that 40th percentile. Again, you're not getting anything from him offensively. That's not his role. He is a big boy there to kind of play defense. So third line pairing type of player. So looking at his evolving hockey card, good, pretty good defense. The offense is very much very, very not good. Solid defense, or on the shorthanded. I think he's gonna probably play some shorthanded minutes for the Sharks. Usually kind of plays second level, kind of second unit penalty kill. So right-handed shot, which the Sharks of course need more right-handed shots. I like the hockey, like the stats aren't super pretty from him. Like looking at his all three cards, like all three zones card, it's not like the prettiest thing ever. So why do the Sharks do this? I think is the big question, right? I think it's protecting themselves in case something bigger comes along, right? The Sharks do have not a lot of right hand. You have Liljegren, you have Thompson, or 2 right-handed shots. You're already kind of scraping into a lot of like the Barracuda. Jimmy Schultz, I assume they'll probably get sent back here with the Barracuda after this road trip. You're already kind of pulling in a lot of your Barracuda defensemen, right? McWood Dolan, who started the season with the Barracuda, Jack Thompson, who spent most of the season with the Barracuda, Jimmy Schultz, who's also been, is the Barracuda's captain. We don't know with Jan Ruda. I think this kind of says Jan Ruda's probably done for the season, or he probably gets traded. If he's not done for the season, if he gets traded, it's probably not much. I think this is just a little bit of protection for yourself, just like the Giles trade, right? This is protection for yourself in case you do make a bigger trade. What's that bigger trade? Is it Jake Wallman? Is it Mario Ferraro? I wouldn't trade Jake Wallman, but that's just me. Mario Ferraro, who of course has been a hot name as a potential piece for teams trying to add a 4th or 5th defenseman. He's got a reasonable contract for next season. I think that's what this is. I think this is a sign of a bigger move to come. And I'm checking. It looks like Utah's been signing a bunch of people. Ian Cole gets a 1-year deal. So that takes another potential defenseman off the market, and is very much a seller's market this year. So this is my guess. Again, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves, right? You're seeing some of these guys get pulled off the market, similar to guys like Mario Ferraro. The Sharks go out and they acquire a depth defenseman. I think Mario Ferraro gets traded. That's my gut feeling out of this is you added another piece who can play, play your play on a third line for you. And I think the Sharks move one of their defensemen. Or maybe they make a big splash and they move. What if, we're hearing Brandt Clark is potentially available. I don't know if the Kings would be willing to trade with the Sharks and then have Brandt Clark in their lives for the next bajillion years. Brandt Clark would be pretty sick. You're probably going to have to trade something really nice for him because he's a really good player, but it would be a really fun discussion to have. I think this is a sign that Mike Greer's got something else cooking, something bigger cooking, and just again wants to protect himself, and then more importantly, wants to protect this Barracuda team because they do want to have a good long defensive run. So, we are going to be going to be keeping an eye on everything. It's been a fun day of trades. And we're gonna keep getting more and more. And man, if the Blackhawks could have beat the Sens, a little frustrating, but we'll take a point here for the Sharks as they're going to as the Sharks are. Oh, Tristan Robbins also was on the ice for CUDA warmups, but is listed as a scratch. Something to keep from Max Miller is Tristan Robbins, and we talked about these 2020 guys, right? A lot of these 2020 guys, we're starting to kind of get to that point here. And that might be a sign, right? If the Sharks are holding out Tristan Robbins, trying to get a little bit of defensive help, maybe Mike Greer's got something cooking. We might be recording again later this evening. So we'll keep an eye out for anything going on. I'm curious. That Tristan Robbins one has got me really curious. It's poor guy is that's interesting. Very, very interesting. So we'll be back soon-ish, probably. Make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. We'll have a preview of the Avs game that'll probably go up around lunchtime-ish Pacific time. So make sure that's only on YouTube as well. Make sure if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, perfect time to do so as well. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts, watch on YouTube, follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until tomorrow? Question mark. Bye, friends.